Patron of Nezumi is a 6/6 spirit that costs 5 and 2 black with the unique ability of Rat Offering, which allows you to play this card anytime you can cast an instant by sacrificing a rat and paying the difference in mana cost. And when any permanent is placed in an opponent's graveyard, that opponent loses 1 life.
Now I know what you're thinking. Crow, there are tons of other better commanders for you to choose from. Why did you pick that one? And that's because I didn't. I actually went on EDHREC.com and I picked a random commander.
If you want to do this yourself, it's super simple. Just head over to EDHREC.com and then click on the menu tab and just press random. Once your page loads, then voila! That is the commander you're building around.
Now, full disclosure, this deck is not finished. I started this deck with the intention of basically making it into a video where me and 3 other players would choose these random commanders and then make a budget build surrounding them. But unfortunately, with this pandemic, this, as well as a lot of other videos, have kind of been put by the wayside. Now, the restrictions on how to make the deck were basics weren't included, as well as the commander, in case you got like $200 commander. Now, since this was originally a budget build, a lot of these choices are a little bit questionable, and that's okay. But if you guys have any other suggestions, leave them in the comments below. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. Now, without further ado, on to the deck tag. For our sorceries, we have the following.
Duress, which allows you to choose an opponent and get to look at their hand. Then you can choose a non-creature, non-land card and have them discard it. Hopefully you can hit a pesky enchantment, or if anything, just scout out a foe's hand for the rest of the table to see. If you want something with a little more assurance that you'll actually have an opponent binning something, we have Mind Rot, which allows you to choose one opponent and just have them discard 2 cards. Whether they choose a permanent or non-permanent, you'll get something out of their hand and into their graveyard. Now let's say you want to spread the love around. We've got your back with that as well. Siphon Mind says that every other player discards a card, and each card discarded this way, you draw cards equal to that amount. Drawing potentially 3 cards for 4 mana? Not bad if you ask me. Now let's talk about drawing cards for a bit. Let's say you've got your opponent's library thinned out a bit, and you want to put the final nail in the coffin. Well, what if we could just get an opponent to draw a whole bunch of cards? Peer into the Abyss will force an opponent to draw half their library, which they'll then have to either use up on their next turn or, surprise surprise, bin it. A plus side of this card also sees them losing half their life on top of it. Also, if a player needs to draw for answers, you can also use this card for a powerful ally. Politics. Yay!
Now with our spirit, we want to make sure that we're taking our opponent's resources and just hitting them hard. So we've got a bunch of cards that take those resources and throw them into the yard.
Reaping Dread has everyone discard a card at the beginning of your upkeep, and everyone who discards the same type of card you discarded loses 3 life. Death comes for us all. This card just makes it faster for our opponents to meet it. Let's say we want to just completely wipe your opponent's hand out. Well, Larceny says that whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card from their hand. We've got rats. There'll be tons of creatures swinging. One of those creatures is Cavern Whisperer, allowing us to mutate our rats and having it so that when they enter the field, they force each opponent to discard a card. Speaking about tons of rats, we have some creatures who support our creatures. Starting with Piper of the Swarm, this human warlock that costs 1 in a black will be used more for its effect than its 1 power and 3 toughness, because it gives every rat you own menace. Pretty nasty, right? It gets better. Got some mana to burn? You can pay 1 in a black and tap the Piper to create an additional 1/1 rat. Want to create some even more chaos? Tap the Piper and pay 2 in a black, and sacrifice 3 rats to take control of any target creature. Like that indestructible Eldrazi on that green players who ramped way too hard board? Well, it's yours now. Need a flyer to protect you against Kalia and the horde of dragons, angels, and demons she has at her disposal? You got it. Want to just take someone's commander? Be my guest. Ratcatcher is a worldly tutor for your rats on every one of your turns. Not bad when you're 3 turns in and you've got that engine running. And Ogre Slumlord says that whenever a non-token rat you control dies, you create a 1/1 rat token. Goes great with the Piper when we get to keep our things while sacrificing them at the same time. Oh, and your rats also get Death Touch, making it really hard for your opponent to block accordingly.
Now, what benefits do we get from having our opponents discard their cards? Yes, our commander does a little bit of work, but we need to find out what we can do more in order for our cards to do more. Thankfully, we've got a spicy suite of cards that do just that.
Shrieking Affliction checks our opponent's hand. Though you can't see your opponent's hand, if they have one or less card in said hand, then they get zapped for 3 life. Quest for the Nihilstone gains a counter whenever any opponent discards a card. Once we're able to whittle away their resources to none, and the stone is online by getting only 2 counters, it pings that player for 5 damage. I'm not sure if you've been paying attention, but we've already hit our opponent for 8 life if they don't have cards in their hand. And that's every turn. It doesn't stop there though. What if we want to deal damage while getting those 2 cards online? Well, Liliana's Caress, Magrim, and Fell Spectre all say that whenever an opponent discards a card, they take 2 damage. 1 card, 6 potential damage? Yes, please. Oh, and the Spectre forces an opponent to bin a card when it ETBs. Great if you can find a way to recur it. And finally, we have Geth's Grimoire to help fill up our own hand while our opponents are being depleted of their own. Drawing cards is always a good thing, right? But how can we play all these cards we're potentially drawing? Well, there's 2 cards in particular that allow for potentially explosive turns. Starting off with a favorite amongst aristocrat decks is Dark Ritual. Spend 1 black, get 3 back, now you're ready to be on the attack, while the opponents say stuff like, man, that's whack. Next we have the Song of the Damned, which is pleased with the creatures we sack, for it says we add a swamp to our pool for each creature we now lack.
What just happened right there? Anyways, I know what you guys are thinking. Crow, are you pulling the wool over our eyes? And I can assure you, no sheep have been harmed in the making of this video. At least not this one. If you want Bones or I to make a sheep tribal deck, let us know down below. That could be a nice little video. Anyways, on to the thing that you guys have been waiting for. Rats.
We're starting things off with a random rat.
For now.
And Graph Rats. A 2/1 rat that costs you 1 and a black that says at the beginning of combat, if we own and control Midnight Scavengers and Graph Rats, we exile them and return them melded into their new chittering host. More on that later. Next up we have the rats that like to pick apart the hands of our opponents, whether it be through attacking or just standing there. Menacingly.
Just standing there. Menacingly!
We'll start things off with a rat that puts in work when it ETBs. Burglar Rat steals our hearts while it forces each opponent to discard a card when you play it for 1 and a black. Not bad for a little 1/1. Next up in this list is Stronghold Rats, which is another 2/1 rat that costs 2 and a black and will be doing most of the heavy lifting in combat. It has Shadow, which means chances are it's getting through, and when it does, each player discards a card. Spicy. Last up, just in life, we need a rat to achieve something in its death. Drainpipe Vermin is a 1/1 rat that costs 1 black, and when it dies, you can pay 1 black mana to have an opponent discard a card. Pretty good synergy with a certain Slumlord we all know. Next in our list of rats, with the ability to throw a wrench in anyone's plans, are the Misers. This dynamic duo does so much to squeeze your opponent's resources thin, with Nat reducing each opponent's hand size by 1, and Locust reducing it by 2. Wow and wow. Try playing Magic with a max hand size of only 4. It's a different ballgame then. Next up we have the rats who pump themselves. These all are the key MVPs of this deck, ensuring that you have some power in your punches and make your opponents realize that they should not have taken you lightly. First up we have Pack Rat. For 1 and a black you get a rat that says that its power and toughness are equal to the number of rats you control, so it's always going to be 1, which is mice, or nice. You can also pay 2 and a black and discard a card to create a copy of Pack Rat. Fancy. Next we have Rat Colony, and Rat Colony, and another Rat Colony? And let me guess, yep, it's another Rat Colony. And just because 5 seems like the magic number, a 5th Rat Colony. These critters can get annoying, as just a 1 and a black being a base 2/1, it gets +1/+0 for each other rat you control. And yes, you can have any number of cards named Rat Colony in your deck, even memeing on your opponents by having 40 of them. Next on the list we have Pestilence Rats. And it's pretty much... Wait a second.
Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but this is the only card that's not in foil in the entire deck. That's because they don't make one. Anyways, back to the deck.
Weird. It's not foil. Anyways, this rat allows us to capitalize on the board and ensure we're the only one doing rats by saying that its power is equal to the total number of rats in play, no matter where they are. Last in this list is Swarm of Rats, which, yep, you guessed it, has the power equal to the number of rats you control.
The next group of cards are our Secret Commanders. You're probably going to be playing these more than our actual commander. But regardless, here they both are.
Inkai's Servant of Oni is pricey both in cost and well, actual price, but its effect allows us to use some of the rats we love the most over and over again. For 4 and 2 black, we get a Rat Ninja that's 5/4. Okay stats, but when you pair that up with its ability, you'll soon see that this is where everything comes full circle. Inkai's has the unique effect of ninjutsu. What that means is that when you have an unblocked attacker, and there'll be a lot of those because who's going to block a poor widow rat, you can bounce that creature back to your hand and bam, slap him in the face for 5, and when Inkai's does just that, you can browse the amazing catalog of creatures your opponent had to discard and return it under your control. This card is going to get a lot of hate, so having it have built-in recursion in the form of regenerating for 1 and a black is just an added benefit. The last in our mischief is none other than the main man of the minute, the muse of mornings that will never be seen, the maker of malice and...
Oh. Too much? Oh, you just want the card name? It's Marinar. It's Marinar.
What more can be said about this card? Yes, its cost is high, and this closes out games if left unchecked. 3 and 2 black, and you get yourself a 2/3 rat rogue. Not impressed yet? Well, when that rogue is giving all of your rats fear keywording, you'll be singing a different tune. You can also tap them. Yes, just tap, no mana needed here, folks. And by doing that and sacrificing another rat, you create X 1/1 rat tokens that's equal to the number of rats you control, that all have fear, that you can then do again next turn, and the next turn, and the next. You get the picture.
Phew. That was a lot. You all still with me? Anyways, we've got all of our creatures, but how do we make sure that our creatures get the edge in battle that they deserve? Thankfully, this next suite of cards allows us just that. Let's jump right in.
Adaptive Automaton is a recently reprinted card, thankfully, that shows some love to our rat buddies. Costing a low 3 colorless mana for a 2/2 construct, when it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type.
Rats, obviously.
It then becomes that type in addition to its other types, and creatures of that chosen type also get +1/+1. Want more +1/+1 goodness? Well, Ascendant Avankar is a 4 and 2 black vampire that gives that desired pump, and also makes your opponent's creature just a little bit tinier with a -1/-1. Bad Moon is an enchantment for 1 and a black that gives all your black creatures +1/+1. And surprise, surprise, we're running a mono black colored deck. That means, with the exception of our automaton, they're all getting buffed. Rounding out our list of cards that buff our creatures, we've got a nifty little artifact. Hall of Triumph costs us 3, and when it ETBs, we choose a color, and creatures of the chosen color we control get that +1/+1 buff. Another way we can give our creatures the edge is by discounting the cost of those creatures. We do that by using Bantu's Monument, which discounts the cost of, once again, black creatures we cast, and also drain our opponent's life and giving 1 of that to us when we do. Chittering Harvester isn't a rat, but it does allow us to mutate for 4 and a black, and when it does, each opponent needs to sack a creature. This is a great way to control the board while also building our own forces. A staple in almost every deck running black, Plaguecrafter swoops in, and when it does, each opponent again must sacrifice a creature or a planeswalker. If they can't, they'll be forced to discard a card. Great for what our deck wants to do, as we'll be controlling the control player. Feel free to ninjutsu this one, too, for a double dip. Now we'll be discarding a lot of creatures and even killing some off. We'll also be working on forcing our opponents to discard, so they'll be eager to play their most frightening creatures. That's when, just like a rat, we come back and bite them, with Living Death forcing our opponents to exile all creatures in their graveyard and then sacrificing all creatures they control. to then bring back the exiled creatures creates the perfect bit of chaos we need in a late game. Thought you were done with that mischief? Unfortunately for your opponent, it's only just begun. What if your opponent has a pretty scary yard and your back is against the wall on the field, but you still want to try to do one last big swing for the game? Well, luckily, EDHREC's Wake allows you to pull off just that, an all but you board wipe of everyone's creatures and walkers in true EDHREC fashion. What's better than destroying your opponent's creatures? Having the looming threat of sacrificing, yes, sacrificing, half of the permanents an opponent controls. Curse of Cabal is one of my favorite cards as it allows for some truly insane games of politics. Sure, you can hardcast it for 9 and a black, but why do that when you can suspend to it for 2 and 2 black? The awesome thing is, your opponent can increase the amount of time counters on this card by sacrificing just one permanent, slowly whittling down everyone instead of just hitting that one person. And who that person is? Who knows? Only you do. And at the end of the day, just like Unisanis, the clock strikes 0 eventually. Last in the removal section is the new card in Zendikar Rising that is seeing more and more play. Feed the Swarm allows you for 1 and a black to destroy target creature or enchantment. This is exactly what black needed in budget. Sure, you lose life equal to the destroyed card CMC, but hey, to the victor goes the spoils.
Now, how do we gain back the life that we've lost? Whether it be taking attacks or using our resources? Well, we've got a bunch of cards that will make sure that you'll be able to regain the life that you've lost as long as if you're doing the things that black mages do. Let's jump right in.
We've got the usual suspects: Gary, Sangromancer, Zulaport, Cutthroat, and Ayara. All these cards either ping our opponents or allow us to live our best aristocrat life, sometimes even both. Gary pings on your devotion to black, and we've been using a lot of black enchantments, so these things will be sticking around. Sangromancer allows us to gain 3 life whenever an opponent's creature dies or when they discard a card, and Cutthroat pings whenever a creature dies. We then gain 1 life per creature. Ayara pings based on when a creature ETBs, allowing for our rats to rip into our foes from the start. We also have Faith of the Devoted, which allows us to pay 1 when we discard or cycle a card. If we do, each opponent loses 2 life and we gain 2 life. And lastly, in this category, we have Elixir of Immortality, which allows us to pay 2 and tap to shuffle both Elixir as well as our entire graveyard into our library and then netting us 5 life. Really good for a 1-cost artifact. Next up, we transition nicely into Recursion with 3 cards. Midnight Scavengers
Told ya!
allows us to return any CMC 3 or less creature from our yard into our hand, and once they meld with Graph Rats, they become truly immense, turning into a 5/6 Eldrazi horror with haste and menace, also pumping our creatures +1/+0 and giving them menace to boot. Depending on how you play this, that could be game. Unearth acts like Midnight Scavenger, except no body and only 1 black mana. And Call to the Netherworld allows us to bring back any black creature from our yard into our hand for only 1 mana.
Angel.
0 if you discard it and cast it for its madness cost. Smell that?
Beast.
That's the smell of synergy. The remaining cards are kind of a hodgepodge of entries, where I was still trying to keep the cost of the deck still in budget, but somehow viable on the battlefield, with only 1 really contributing to winning, that being Lashwraith, which pumps whatever creature we have it equipped to +1/+1
Vampire
for each swamp we control. And we've got 39 to be exact.
Shapeshifter.
What's left is Open the Graves for more bodies if and when our creatures die. They'll bring back a 2/2 zombie if they weren't already a token.
Eldrazi.
Archfiend of Ifnir, which allows us to make our opponent's creatures smaller when we start discarding our own cards. Malefic
Soldier.
Scythe and Mindcarver for added equipment goodness, and last but certainly not least, Fileton Shriek, having us gain and our opponent losing a bunch of life when we swing into a hopeful open board.
So that's my first deck tech. Do you want to see any more videos of decks that I own in this type of fashion? I absolutely love Commander, and I have so many decks to do videos of, but I need to know what you all think. Do you have any suggestions? Do you think this could be a fun deck to play with? Remember, if you're going to be picking up any of these decks, make sure you head on over to TCG Player. We do have an affiliate link down in the ether below, so please go ahead and use that affiliate link. If you're going to be picking up any singles, whether it be the cards that I mentioned today or future sets that come out, I hear Commander Legends is pretty big. I still haven't gotten any of my collector's boxes at the time of filming, which is fun. And if you use that affiliate link, it helps keep the lights on. Oh, very funny, guys. Also, if you're new to the channel, welcome. It would be a huge help if you go ahead and subscribe, like the video, comment, and also share with your friends. Every single little bit helps. It keeps me motivated, makes me know that everyone is enjoying or not enjoying. If you're not enjoying too, that's completely fine. That's also okay. But at least you're letting me know. Anyways, until next time, Planeswalkers, I've been me, you've been you. Stay classy.